Hello, today in this video we are going to cover the topic oogenesis. Okay, so let's see. First of all, we should know the meaning of the term genesis. Genesis means the formation. So formation of gametes is called gametogenesis. So male gamete is sperm and a female gamete is the ovum. So formation of sperm is called spermatogenesis, whereas the formation of ovum is called oogenesis, right? So in this particular video, we will see how the ovum formation occurs and where it takes place, right? So oogenesis process occurs in the ovaries, right? So let us draw the diagram of the female reproductive system. So these are the two ovaries, right and left ovary, and then there is a fallopian tube. This is the fallopian tube. This is the uterus. Uterus is called mother womb. And this is the vagina. Right? Let us write down ovary. This is fallopian tube. Uterus. This is cervix area, which is also called birth canal, and this is the vagina. So oogenesis process occurs in the ovaries. So here in the ovaries, oogenesis takes place. Now interesting thing about the oogenesis is that it starts before the birth of the child, right? So we can say that it starts when the female child is in the fetus stage, okay, and it gets completed after the fertilization. Okay, this is very interesting that the oogenesis occurs or it starts before birth in the fetus stage and gets completed after the fertilization. Fertilization means the fusion of the male and the female gamete, and it is a discontinuous process. So we can say this is a discontinuous process because it starts before birth. After birth till the puberty, no changes takes place, no more follicles are added in the ovary. So it stops over there. Then it again starts after the puberty and gets completed after the fertilization when sperm enter and fertilization takes place. So it is a discontinuous process. Spermatogenesis is a continuous process, right? So let's see what happens when, suppose she is a mother carrying a female fetus in her womb. Okay, so this is the female fetus, and these are the ovaries of the female fetus. So as I say that the oogenesis start before birth. So you can see here in the ovaries only when this female child is in fetus state, oogenesis start. Okay, many follicles are formed in the ovaries. Now let's see what happens. So this is ovary. Okay, this is ovary. Now outer layer is what we call germinal epithelium. Now in this layer, germinal epithelium, some cells are quite larger. Some cells are quite larger, which is having the large nucleus also. Okay, so these cells are larger in size, and these larger cells are called germ cells. And this layer is called germinal epithelium. So it is an epithelium only, but this epithelium is going to form the gamete, so we call it a germinal epithelium. Okay, some cells are quite larger, so we call them germ cells. Now these germ cells divide methodically. Okay, they divide methodically and they form oogonia cells. Okay, they start forming oogonia cells. So these are the oogonia cells. Oogonia cells divide methodically and they form many oogonia cells. Isn't it? Germinal cells form oogonia cells. Oogonia cells itself divide methodically and they increase their number. So many oogonia cells are formed. Millions of oogonia cells are formed. Okay. Now some of the oogonia cells, suppose this one I am talking about, this oogonia cell will form primary oocyte. Okay, this is what we call primary oocyte, and it gets surrounded by oogonia cells only. Those cells, those oogonia cells which is not having the potential to form the primary oocyte, they surround themselves around the primary oocyte, right? As what I am talking of, like this is the oogonia which is going to form the primary oocyte. Rest other oogonia which are not having the potential to form the primary oocyte, they make a layer around the primary oocyte, and this layer is now now we call granulosa cells. Okay, these cells are called granulosa cells. And this whole structure which is having primary oocyte inside, primary oocyte plus granulosa cells, this whole structure is called the follicle now. Okay, so many follicles are formed in the fetus stage only. Okay, so this follicle is called primordial follicle. This is very immature follicle, so we call it a primordial follicle. This primordial follicle, which is having primary oocyte inside and surrounded by a granulosa cell, you can see that here in the primary oocyte, this primary oocyte get arrested at the meiosis first stage. Okay, we can say that it gets arrested at the prophase 1 stage of the meiosis 1, right? Now the child gets born. Okay, so till here we can see this is what happening in the ovary of the fetus. Okay, so many primordial follicles are formed at the fetus stage, but you can see from these many follicles, millions of follicles are formed. Many of them they degenerate. We call it atresia. They degenerate and we call it atresia. They undergo atresia. Now, by that time, the girl attained the puberty, only 60,000 to 80,000 left in each ovary. Okay, because many follicles undergo atresia. So this happens only between the period from birth till the puberty. At that time, nothing happens in the ovary, no more follicles are added, but only one thing is happening there, that is the follicles are undergoing atresia. Right now, this primary follicle now changes into primordial follicle changes into primary follicle. Okay, so now primordial follicles changes into primary follicle. This is primary oocyte only. Surround this primary oocyte grow in size, surrounded by a single layer of granulosa cells. This is now we call primary oocyte. Sorry, primary follicle. It is called primary follicle, which is having primary oocyte inside surrounded by a granulosa cells. Okay. Now this primary follicle now changes into the secondary follicle. What I am saying here, that this process of formation of primary follicle to secondary, then tertiary, then graphene, this process occurs after puberty. Remember this process occurs after puberty. When the girls attain puberty, gonadotropin releasing hormones start secreting in our body, then only this primary follicles gets converted into primary follicle, then secondary, then tertiary, and the most mature is the graphene follicle. So now primary follicle changes into secondary follicle. So this is the secondary follicle having primary oocyte surrounded by many granulosa cells. So it gets multi-layer now. So this is multi-layer now. And one more layer you will find around it, and that layer is called the theca layer. One more layer is added, that layer is the theca layer. This is theca. And this structure is called secondary follicle. Secondary follicle gets changes into tertiary follicle. When the secondary follicle gets changes into tertiary follicle, this primary oocyte, now here you can see that meiosis 1 gets completed. Primary oocyte now changes into secondary oocyte. This is a secondary oocyte, and one small polar body is also formed that later on degenerates. So one polar body is formed before fertilization, and the other polar body which is formed in female, that is formed after the fertilization. So this polar body later on degenerates. So this is the secondary oocyte. Now secondary oocyte, what you will see here in the secondary oocyte, and this whole structure which is secondary follicle, now this is the tertiary follicle. Here you will see that a small cavity start forming, and that cavity is called antrum. So you will see a cavity called antrum in the tertiary follicle. So this is the cavity, this is the cavity called antrum. And this tertiary follicles have two theca layers. Okay, here you will find theca interna and theca externa. Okay, this is theca interna and theca externa. Theca interna is going to secrete estrogen. Theca interna secretes the hormone called estrogen. Okay, so this is what we call tertiary follicle. This is the tertiary follicle. Now you will see that this secondary oocyte remains secondary oocyte only, but it gets surrounded by a zona pellucida layer and corona radiata layer. Okay, corona radiata is nothing but the cells of granulosa only, but it is surrounded by the secondary oocyte, so we call it the corona radiata layer. And a large cavity called the antrum. Large cavity antrum is also formed, which is a fluid filled cavity. So this is the most mature follicle called the Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle. Graafian follicle then burst, and this secondary oocyte, Graafian follicle burst, secondary oocytes released. This secondary oocyte released, it enters into the fallopian tube. So you can see here that ovum is not released. What is released is the secondary oocyte. This secondary oocyte will changes into ooted than ovum only when there is a entry of the sperm and when the fertilization takes place. Okay, so here the release, or we can say the ovulation, is of the secondary oocyte. Okay, theca layers are also there. Theca interna and theca externa are also present. Right? Now, as and when the secondary oocyte means ovulation takes place, whatever the cells left, they will form a yellow mass which is called corpus luteum. This corpus luteum secretes progesterone. This corpus luteum is going to secrete progesterone, which is very, very essential to maintain the pregnancy, and at the end of the pregnancy it releases a hormone called relaxin. Okay, and if the fertilization doesn't occur, this corpus luteum degenerates, and this degenerating body is called corpus albicans. So this is all about oogenesis. Thank you for watching.